Welcome, everyone. It was very warm in here, and it seems to be expeditiously cooling. So if you think this is hot, just wait till we all wind up in hell, okay? Who was it? One of us made the joke earlier about walking in. Is this one of these things where you got to scare the hell out of people by turning the heat up way so damn high? Anyway, if you're looking for the former ministers, the ex-pastors, you're in the right spot, okay? We do want to take a moment before we officially jump into the panel here. A couple introductory comments, but we do want to take a moment to recognize anyone here sitting amongst us who either is or has been any variation of clergy, professional religious leader, minister. If you have, please stand up, raise your hand. Okay, there's Russell. Yeah, okay, yeah, here we go, folks. Absolutely. Thank you for your work for the kingdom, all right? And also just want to mention the Clergy Project real quick. I know Russell's here representing the Clergy Project. A number of us have been involved in it in various ways. That may come up over the course of the panel, potentially. Clergy Project works with providing services to religious leaders around the world who no longer believe in God stuff, providing peer support, community resourcing, career transition assistance. They have a table out in the hallway, which Russell is heading up. Make sure stop by, say hello if you're not familiar with them already. That said, again, thanks everybody for coming out today. So, couple comments. So we saw, who doesn't love the name of this panel? 3 ex-pastors go see a shrink, okay? Starts off like, it's like the start of a great joke, right? A rabbi and a mom and a priest walk into a bar, 3 ex-pastors go see a shrink, right? As we've talked through in preparation of this, which we didn't even know who was leading the damn thing until a couple days ago, okay? But, normally the problem with pastors is everybody wants to be the leader, okay? And sometimes, it's different. But over these last few days, as we've discussed, one thing that's become clear is it's not 3 ex-pastors up here. All 4 of us are former ministers. And that's just become clear, okay? And so what we're looking at, though, who doesn't love a good joke? Who doesn't love a fake therapy session? All kinds of fun things. Instead, what we've decided, take it in a little bit different direction and instead simply have a conversation. And so might have some fun, some levity, some fun stuff, but also there might be kind of some deep stuff here. But what we're looking to do is have a conversation. 4 former ministers have a conversation about mental health and human wholeness. That's what we're looking at doing. So we're just going to have a conversation up here. And then about half an hour in or something like that, we'll open it up, the conversation to all of us. Any questions you might have, be it along this line or anything else you're curious about picking the brain of a former minister about. Also, too, we decided rather than taking time to each go around and introduce ourselves, I don't know if you've ever realized, but you tell 4 former ministers to make introductions. Even if you tell us to make it 30 seconds each, 20 minutes from now, we'll have gotten through 2 of us, okay? So instead, you'll just see some profile slides as we're talking to kind of introduce us that way and whatnot. But ask questions along the way, and certainly we'll talk. You think we'll find some things to talk about? Think so? Maybe?
Think so.
All right, so. Let's start off this, okay? Mental health, human wholeness as ex-ministers, and maybe you could actually say, we'll see this in the profile, and feel free to comment on it, of course, to comment on whatever you'd like. But we say, even when we say 4 ex-ministers, even that's kind of a little bit loose way of putting it, because you're doing some real ministry now, building secular community. You've got Greta Vosper's, I don't know if you're still calling it a church, Greta Vosper did, and you're the new minister / executive director at Greta Vosper's church in Canada. And so, yeah.
Real quick, the church that I'm a part of, we don't know if we use the church name, we say community gathering, but just years ago we decided to switch from being a church to a values-based community, which I think is incredible that they had the courage to do so, yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about, let's go back to when we were doing theistic ministry as believers in God stuff, okay? Let's just talk a little bit about our own sense of mental health and human wholeness. How healthy were we when we were there?
I was a wretch undone. I was a person who believed that a broken and a contrite heart is what God would not ignore. And so because of that, I was literally living my life in brokenness, calling it wholeness. Because ministry, especially in the charismatic sense, had pushed me to the place of believing that desperation was the highest honor, to be a God chaser, to be desperate after God. So because of that, I forsook my mental health in such a way. But I mean, even when you imagine, sorry, I guess that's good preaching. Even when you imagine Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, if you try to model yourself after that, you're watching someone literally having a mental breakdown in that moment, who say, if it's possible, if it's at all possible, take this cup from me, but nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. You know how many times I prayed that in my life while dealing with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, extreme social disorder, but I'm finding a way to mask myself through it because brokenness is the way. And I mean, from whether you're dealing with Adam, whether you're dealing with Abraham, whether you're dealing with David, whether you're dealing with Jesus, whether you're dealing with Paul, brokenness becomes the way, at least from a charismatic perspective. And so I was a wretch undone, man.
And your brokenness, if I'm hearing you right, wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. And Janine was going to say something too.
Similarly, I spent 25 years with severe depression, hiding it from everybody except my family, and panic attacks, and not going to see a medical professional because that was giving into sin. It was sinful thoughts I had. If I prayed enough, I could overcome it. My family paid the price for that, and it's the biggest regret I have. And nobody knew except for one pastor who kept me from going to the doctor.
Wow, so he knew and wouldn't let you go or tried to get in your
The
way.
biggest eye-opener was I had a panic attack while at work, and I worked at the church, and I found myself, when the phone rang, hiding in the closet where the paper was kept on the floor. He knew, yeah.
This is too heavy too early. God dang. Like I was not, because like as soon as you said that, like I had moments and I didn't realize there were panic attacks until this moment.
I think the biggest thing it's given me, though, is a lot of empathy for my clients now. When they're talking about panic attacks, when they're talking about nobody understands, I can literally say, let's back up a little. I'm going to give you a little bit of self-disclosure, not a lot. It's not about me, but this happened to me. And you can see their face relax, like, if you're okay, then maybe I can be okay. And yeah, so I use it for good. I use it for good now. And I understand a whole lot more about trauma from a religious sense that doesn't have a specific incident, so to speak, towards me. And that's where I go with my therapy. So it's all good now. At the time, it wasn't so much. But
Joe, were you going to say something?
Yeah, for me, I think of a quote that is, "It is no sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick culture." I thought that I had mental health.
Wow, preach.
And it's no sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick culture. I thought that I was healthy. I did the things that you're supposed to do. I was the preacher that people like, to see speak and whatnot. And that feeds your ego, that makes you think that, oh, I'm doing something right. And for me, you mentioned empathy. So big part of my story was basically when I went into some different cultures. I went to the country of Denmark, and I spoke at a conference there. I spoke about how, in John, where it says, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full, and how living the Christian life would give you the best life possible, which then you'd always give this disclaimer, but if you're going through different struggles, see a therapist, because, God doesn't do that one, But my point is when I was in that culture, I would go and I would speak in the morning and I would speak at night and I would share from my tradition, and then I would go into town during the afternoon, and I'd realize that people did things a different way. And yet their statistics said that they were one of the cultures with the best life satisfaction, the best well-being, and yet they were more secular. And then I came back and I said, well, what do I do with that? And cognitive dissonance followed, and keep it short. Then there became some mental health struggles that I'm sure we'll get into in a bit. So.
Wow, it's just so much in every direction, and for some of us, we come from elements, corners of church world that are much more rightward, fundamentalist, anti everything that resembles sanity. Others of us come from more progressive spaces or progressive-ish. So I come from an evangelical space that was also kind of a lot more leftward. We believed the Bible was the inspired, inerrant word of God, but we interpreted everything with it about as leftward as possible, pro-social justice, very communist, really. And so it had glimmers and glimpses and shadows of greater health. We were very pro-psychology, very pro-mental health. My daughters, while I was a pastor, had a therapist that they would see. So I felt very healthy throughout my ministry until my entire view of reality started to stretch apart and crumble as God was gone and everything removed, right? And so as I began to deconstruct everything, as my understanding of God and the universe and all of this started to crumble and pull apart, and well, if God is gone, if God is not real, then what the fuck is going on? And begging and pleading with the God of wonders, the Lord of hosts, to please reveal himself to me once more, spending 2 years fighting for my faith to try and, because I loved my faith, right? I loved it. It was very comfortable faith. It was progressive space, very comfortable space. We didn't even really talk about hell. Yeah, we were heretics even then. And so it felt very comfortable. It's great when you're at the center, when you're God's superhero, right? And you're the center of his plan to save the world, right? I was a lead pastor. I was like a senior pastor, right? I mean, we're the, you're the cool kids, right? And so I love my faith, and then all of a sudden it just wasn't there anymore, and I did not know how to function. From the time I was 16, from the time I was junior high, I saw myself as a follower of Christ. I saw Jesus as my only friend, and I didn't really have friends as a kid. And Jesus was my only friend, and now he's gone. Well, if I am nothing without Christ, and now there is no Christ, then there is no me. And I had a breakdown. 3 a.m. weeping in my corner office, clawing at my hair, literally pulling my hair out in a fetal position, sobbing, begging for God to return to me for 2 fucking years. Then finally leave the ministry, still trying to believe, because maybe why I'm struggling is because I'm spending all this time laboring over everyone else's souls. What if I can just focus on my own? Maybe then God will return. And then it was 6 months after that where I'm like, well, fucking hell, I guess I really am an atheist. And then everything was great or whatever. But yeah.
One of the things that I didn't have to grapple with is women in ministry are never at the top. And never. In fact, if we're in a room full of all staff, if we're the only woman there, we're making the coffee, we're doing all of that because we have no stature. We just do the work. So I didn't have to grapple with that. I had to grapple with just deconstructing 50 years of my life, from a child onward, and then trying to factor in the things that had happened to me along the way and make sense of them. And honestly, finishing up my master's in counseling was the final straw at a Christian college. I went, fuck it. And
That was your final thesis paper. You said, fuck it. It's the only thesis I've ever read.
honestly, one of the things we had to do was live in another culture for 3 days and write about it. And just to be a rebel, I chose the LGBTQ culture and lived with a couple of gay men who were married and thought for sure they'd fail me, but I got an A. I don't know if they even read it, but it was a fuck it kind of statement. And so it took me 2 years before I could say the word atheist, but I had already decided at that point there was no God.
Yep. Like that was like mine was kind of like the opposite spectrum of yours, right? So I did feel that I was healthy, but I knew something was wrong. And that's why like I had such a strong reaction to your story. It was beautiful for me. Like I love that because I would not necessarily use the term healthy to describe myself today. I would use the term aware. I don't know what healthy looks like yet. I'm trying to figure it out. And so I'm aware when something is wrong. And I love that and that's why that was a strong reaction, because I remember times that after church, I couldn't even get out of my car. And so like I'd have to be taken to the hospital, and they would be doing brain scans and everything, trying to figure out what was wrong. And because in my mind, I'm healthy at that time, But in 2014, I became an atheist in a moment because I realized that nothing about my life was healthy. My finances weren't healthy. My family wasn't healthy. My faith wasn't helping. And so at that moment, my goal just became to be aware, to no longer pretend that you're okay when you're not, and to be comfortable with that. And it gave me some trust issues because like I spent my whole life like depending on my mentors to counsel me and advise me and going to the people they suggested I go to.
Yeah.
And then I finally realized these motherfuckers are some dumbasses. Why would I go to them? So I'm just not, they don't even know how to ask the right fucking questions. Like, I don't even know who you advising. Did you just pick this shit out of a bowl or something? Like, fuck. So like, but after that, I became very protective of me.
Yeah.
And I became very protective of my mental space,
Yeah.
my emotional space. And it wasn't, the God thing was overnight. It was like, oh yeah, because I knew the life I lived.
Yeah.
And I lived it faithfully.
Yeah.
And to be where I was after 2 decades, I was like, motherfucker, even if you is real, fuck you, absent ass. Dead
Yeah,
ass.
yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
No, dead ass. No.
Right, right.
Sorry, damn, I should have did that one. That's built up. Damn
No,
it.
it's good. So I'm curious, and Joe, I know you've got something teed up. I think you want to say. I'm gonna throw it where I'd like to kind of see us journey down a little bit. And while we're thinking about that, I want to hear what you were planning to say just now. But as you're saying that, let's also kind of guide towards, yes, our own sense of mental health and human wholeness as ministers back then. But let's take a few minutes and talk about the impact our work had on the health and human wholeness of the people we ministered to and among. So let's kind of meander that way. But yeah.
I'll try to make that transition. I'm not the best of a driver, so sorry in advance. Like I said, my mental health, I think, as far as I was aware, it seemed pretty good because, as I said, it's no sign of health, though, to be well-adjusted to a sick culture. However, when I began to realize and have cognitive dissonance, so I'd shared I'd gone to Denmark, I came back home from speaking at this conference, and then I said, I'll just watch a debate or two. I'll figure it out. I know all these things, I'll get my answers. And, that debate or two, here I am. Listened to a lot of debates, and I struggled, and I wrestled. And it took me about 2 years to really come to realization, or maybe I should even say to accept the realization. And so over those 2 years, as we're talking about mental health and then the transitioning into the impact that it's had on others, I lived the human experience. I felt pain, I felt struggle, and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. And this is why things like this are so valuable. This is why I love, leading a community that's built on values. And when people can come in and they, so you believe something different. Who gives a flying fuck, excuse my French? Are you a kind and loving, compassionate person? And so for me at my congregation, even though I hadn't, I was still trying to be the best Christian I could, the fact that I questioned things and I couldn't speak to a single person, the loneliness that I felt, and as humans, one of the greatest needs that we have is to connect. And that was terrible in my mental health. The first person that I ever spoke to, that I said, I don't think I believe it anymore, was a friend of mine sitting in my car in my driveway, and he had come out to me about 10 years previously as gay. And I think that there's some similarity in that. And he had that struggle for years, where he knew he was gay his whole life. And yet he went to a Christian college with me, and he couldn't share it, and he couldn't share who he was. And so as we talk about the mental health of others, I have to take responsibility. On one hand, I can be honest, I can say, because my grandfather was a minister, that, okay, I did that. So I'm going to be as honest as I can, but also at a certain point, I taught that if you're gay, it's wrong. And I'm sorry. I voted a way that I'm discouraged by myself in 2016, if you know what I mean. And I think about the people who were a part of my community. There's a lot of good that was done. I worked for the Salvation Army for nearly a decade. We did a lot of great things. But we also said, if you're of a certain lifestyle, we'll help you, but you don't belong. And where that has, I think, brought me to now is I realized just the ugly side of it. There, to be honest, I think there's a lot of good in religion sometimes, but there's an ugly side. And so the mental health of others, in a way, and I'll close, I'm going on preacher mode.
No,
here.
you're good.
I'll close with this. Emotions are not good or bad, and correct me if I'm wrong here, therapists. They are pleasant and unpleasant, is the way I like to frame it. And in a way, I'm glad that I went through 2 years of unpleasant emotions, because it taught me that I can share in the journey with people. Is this being recorded and put on anything?
I don't know, is it?
I'll just say this. I won't give specifics. I've had people who've come to me now and who have said, I'm exploring my gender. And because of things like that they know you're a safe space. And I'm glad that I've held that emotion, that I know what it's like to feel like you can't be seen. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually want to use one of my more progressive moments for this.
Yeah.
My church was looking for a new praise and worship leader. Number one, because I was tired of leading the damn music. All right. So I was like, all right, we're just going to pay somebody. And we hired a guy. He was what I call apparently gay, which means he wasn't out.
Okay.
But it was apparent, So we and I talked with my staff about it before we did it. I said, you've seen the guy. They would describe him as animated, And I'm like, but your pastor is tired. And so let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And my church, we were the hood church, so they were like, all right. They didn't really know the Bible anyway, so they didn't really care. Like if pastor cool with it, we cool. So we hired him. and lost 40% of our congregation over the next few years.
Oh, shit.
Like, it was drastic. My church was unusual because we had a high population of men in our congregation. That was the 40% that left. They were like men in the South, specifically black men, incredibly homophobic. And that was an assault on their manhood. Now, we did end up releasing him, not because of the apparently gay or the 40% decrease in revenue.
Sure.
Y'all thought about people leaving. I'm talking about like numbers drop. That means there's less money in the bucket, which means your boy is having to take out loans to pay for the damn church. And that's not fun. But his schedule was busy because apparently the more gayer you are, the more popular you are in praise and worship. And so, he was blowing up. And we weren't mad because it was like, finally, we can probably get back to some normalcy. And so I got back to doing praise and worship. And then I got tired again, so we hired somebody else.
So 40% or so left. The other 60 that remained, how did that affect them in that rupture? How did that affect the rest of the 60% that stayed?
The weird thing about it is they were completely like unaware. It's just not in their mind. And this could have been because we were a two-service church at that time, so they're not really seeing the difference in the numbers. But for the 60 that remained, I think they remained because they didn't care. They didn't care who that person was. They just enjoyed that experience, which was demonstrated because the next person I hired was also apparently gay, and was more apparently, if you ask me. But my church loved him. And he ended up becoming one of like my best friends. Yeah. And like the men in my church embraced him. Our church started growing back. And again, he wasn't less apparently gay. He was more flamboyant, as my staff, more animated than the other guy. But, and this brings back to the question, and I shared this in my book, Black No Believer Next Door, it started to bother me because I realized I humanized everybody in my congregation, regardless of their sins, except him. I allowed everybody else to be whoever you are. You could smoke your cigarettes on my property. I didn't care. People say, Pastor, ain't this God's property? The whole earth is God's property. It's hypocritical to say they can't smoke here, but they can smoke over there. That type of pastor. But I had never done that for his life, even though I had done it privately. He had got drunk one time and texted my drummer some really gay shit. And he called me, like panicked. And I covered for him. Yeah. I became Olivia Pope. I said, it's handled. I fixed it, Yeah. And I did. But I'd never done that for my pulpit. And to this day, I wrestle with what that could have done to his sense of value.
Yeah. Oh. We could go a few different directions from here. Let's do this. Okay. Well, Janine, did you have any more you wanted to say about just impacts of your work?
I think the biggest impact for me was I worked with a lot of parents because I was in early childhood education, and I also wrote the curriculum. And looking back at I was really well done curriculum based on John Piper makes me cringe. But that was the direction I was given by the church. And so I created this full year curriculum for 4 different age levels, age appropriate, etc. But it had that content. And I'm thinking of those children now who are going 18, 20 years old at this point. And I'm hoping it wasn't as negative as I know it probably was. But then the lack of ability to be able to say to parents who are asking me for help what I really wanted to say because I was constrained by my role. And so sometimes the advice I really wanted to give them was outside what the church would allow me to say. And not doing it bothers me to this day.
I just want to piggyback on that last thing you said, because you were like, damn it. Can't do it because this is not what the church would want me to say. And I remember being in so many counseling sessions with my members, and there were things that I want to say to them. There are things that I want to tell them. But I know, like, that's not the biblical response. That's not the pastoral response. That's not the Christian response. And just rethinking that, like, oh my goodness, that is real damage. Because there's some counseling sessions I was in where I was like, hey, y'all just need a divorce. That's what I wanted to say. Like, for real. Y'all just picked each other because y'all wanted to have sex. Let's stop playing these games. Y'all don't like each other. Divorce. Just go ahead. Y'all ain't got no kids. Call it even right now. Split it down the middle. But of course, I couldn't say that. I couldn't say that. No, what God has joined together. Let no, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh my, and it ain't make no damn sense in my head, you know? God ain't the one that put y'all together. I don't remember saying the puppet strings in his dick. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm done.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Just elaborated on what I was thinking.
Oh. Well, let's do this. Well, let's, before we go to questions, we'll go to questions in a moment. So if anybody has one, okay, we'll ask you to, I don't know, do we want to send mics around or anything, or do we just have people stand and shout when we do that? Stand and shout is fine? Okay. All that we've learned or have begun learning since we left church work or the faith, or however you want to state that transition, what we've learned and what we've begun to learn, what's one thing that maybe we've learned that we would like to share with everyone? Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything?
Stomped a room full of preachers. Like,
I'll go for it. First, I want to point out the obvious. As I was walking into the room today, I thought, damn it, Joe, you look like a megachurch youth pastor. Why'd you do that? So sorry.
I'll amen that. I'll amen.
We're going to have a rave here in a moment, by the way. I would say, okay, just make sure I get this question right. What's one thing?
Just anything. Maybe we'll take the number one out of it, but just anything, something. Is there anything that we have learned and are
Sexuality
in the process of
is
learning?
not a bad thing.
Get your freak on, in the words of Missy Elliott. There you go.
There are no limitations on that word I'm using. Sexuality is not a bad thing.
Yes.
I think for me is the church and Christianity does not have a monopoly on love and goodness.
Oh, shit.
So, okay, if you, okay.
How's that book come along, Joe? How's that book coming along? All right.
So I think, growing up, and if you grew up religious, maybe you can connect and relate with this, is that you're told, like, oh, you want to do good with your life? You need to follow the Lord. If not, well, you're just going to become an alcoholic and, whatever, lose your life and whatever. And you're taught, that's the way. I mean, I remember going to conferences as a teenager, and they'd have altar calls, give your life to Christ, of course. And if you want to be a minister or a missionary, who cares if you want to be a teacher? Who cares if you want to help make our cities cleaner and work in sanitation, So once again, that idea that the church and religion or Christianity does not have a monopoly on love. And so now I'll go deep with it. In ancient Greek philosophy, there's what's called virtue theory, and that basically they would say there's this word eudaimonia in Greek, and that means good life. And so the way to the good life, according to most ancient Greek thinkers, would be living through virtue, and so that's what I think now. It's not surefire thing. It's not going to say you're not going to get cancer. It's not going to say that your car's going to break down the way out from here. But it's that's I think the most surefire thing. And so I think it's taught me, and I've had to learn. And I'll say one other thing with it. I've had to learn to trust this.
Yeah.
Whether there's a God or not a God, I got this brain, and this is what I have to trust. And I have to say I can do good, and just simply that I don't. If you can't believe something, I don't even say it's okay. I want to say that's great because you're being honest. And that's, for lack of a better term, like that's, I almost want to say that's blessed, but that's good, you know? But I digress.
I just love how when I said one thing, Joe's like, one thing? What the fuck?
That was
And I said,
sermon.
anything? He's like, okay, anything. Boom, you know, yeah.
I think one of my favorite little sayings is like, we are literally space apes on a floating rock. And that's what I like to remind people of. There's no man behind that curtain. There's no wizard in the sky, which we don't realize how pervasive that ideology is. That idea, once you have it, it's not just someone's looking out for me. It's also that there is a design. And that if I do not measure up to that design, or if other people do not measure up to that design, then they are out of order. So my first thing, we're space apes on a floating rock, no man in the sky. Second thing, there is no fucking such thing as normal. Normal is a social construct. No such thing. Third thing, people are people. Period. They're not labels. They're not leftists. They're not rights. They're not Republicans. They're not Democrats. People are people. You don't know anybody by their label. You don't know them until you know them. And that's literally where I live my life today. Once I got rid of the man in the sky, I had to deconstruct all of the ideas that came from that one idea. And of course, what that leads me to is nobody owes me their existence. Nobody owes me their experience. And that's what I've learned on this side of it.
Yeah.
I want to expand on that. Normal is a social construct because in behavioral health, any diagnosis is literally you are not able to function within the normal construct that is existing in your society. So diagnoses differ by region, country, expectations, etc. And so while some of them are chemical and need some medication support, a lot of them are really, you're just not fitting in with what your social norms are right now, and it's causing cognitive dissonance and harm for you. That's all it is, and that's what we help you through.
Absolutely. Probably, you know, and for myself, I mean, really, it's a lot of it is flowing right into so much of the vibe of what you all have said already, right? And so for me, it's learning, it's continuing to learn, as well as continuing to try to help others continue learning as well. Just this simple idea that your life is your own. Our lives are our own. My life is my own. It's not Christ's or God's. It doesn't belong to your spouse or your community or your boss or whoever. It's your life. And as we begin to, it wasn't until after I left the faith that I was really able to see that as the case, right? Before it was, I am nothing but Christ. You know, I am God's alone, right? I am nothing apart from Christ. And now, well, if there is no Christ, then there is no me. Who the fuck am I? I don't even know who I fucking am anymore, right? So finding your sense of autonomy, of allowing yourself to explore your autonomy, allowing yourself to look in the mirror and say, it's okay if I begin to take greater control of my life. And sometimes when you really think through all the ramifications, well, if I had a choice, I wouldn't want this job or this partner or this hobby or this Saturday whatever with whoever the fuck. I don't really actually enjoy these things, or the way I express myself, or the boxes I've learned to survive best by compounding myself, or not compounding, minimalizing myself into boxes, into frameworks and grids that other people have forced upon me, or that I've just went in on my own because life seemed easier that way. So I volunteered to minimize myself. now saying, whoa, what would it be like if I did less of that? And that can be a terrifying thought. What if I allowed myself to start tiptoeing in the direction? That's terrifying. What would it look like to just dip my toe into the proverbial pond or pool or wherever y'all like to swim, okay? What would that feel like? And can I learn to embrace myself more? When my kids were young, my kids are in their 20s now, but when my kids were young, I thought it was fantastic when one of them was I think she was in junior high at the time. And I started noticing a trend where her educators, when we'd go in for parent-teacher conferences, so maybe it was elementary school. I don't know if parent-teacher conferences were such a thing, and I don't know. Maybe they were. But I started noticing, they said, your daughter does a fantastic job advocating for herself. And at first I was like, oh, wow, what a novel way of putting that. I like this. And then I started seeing it more and more and more often. I don't know if it was the school's trend or if it's something that has become more mainstream, just how it's done, but I had never heard that before. And throughout her years going forward, it was a theme I constantly heard was, your daughter does a fantastic job advocating for herself. What would it look like in our personal lifestyles, decision-making, action steps for each of us to learn to advocate for ourselves to ourselves a little more fully? So anyway, we could go on. We really do want, okay, we've got 5 minutes for questions. Okay, so hand up there. Yep, go ahead, yes. And if somebody has a question for a specific person, I think that's fine. It doesn't have to be on this topic. Given 5 minutes left, yeah, we'll try and keep everything super quick. Let's keep questions quick too. Oh, that's great. First seeds of doubt. Mine was the Bible. I'll keep it to that for now. Just, yeah, the Bible. It's fucking terrible.
I started off as an atheist, actually. I was an atheist as a child, and because my family were Baptist and Methodist, and those churches, obviously those people didn't really believe in a living God. I mean, it was clear to me, like, y'all don't believe this. My mom got demons cast out of her at a Pentecostal church. That's when I was like, okay, maybe these people seem to believe it. But so I'd say, like, I've had doubts since the very beginning. That's why it's called faith.
For me, it was going back to school later in life to get my Bible degree for the church I was working at. They had asked me to go and take some classes. And throughout my life, I had always been told, well, you don't understand. You're just a woman. You don't know how to study the scriptures, despite the fact that they were assigning me to do Bible studies, which was kind of ironic. But once I got into those classes and had the same language, the same terminology, and started to debate with them, I went, you guys are full of whatever. And that was going through my head. And of course, I was being respectful because I was in a Bible college, but that was the seed of doubt. So that would have been 2006, and it took till 2012 before I fully deconstructed.
Yeah. I was just going to say real quick, I'd say for me, Christianity brought me out of Christianity. I chose to love my neighbor as myself. And I mentioned going to Denmark, and what caused the doubt is because I put myself in people's shoes, and I realized there's nothing wrong with different beliefs and different ways of looking at things. So,
wow. Wow. Yeah. Was there? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Hey, we only have 5 minutes.
Was there a question, though?
I can answer that. I didn't actually come out to my family. 2 of my daughters know I don't believe anymore. One of them does not. However, I divorced my husband at the time as part of that whole finding myself. And my oldest daughter has a real hard time with it, even almost 8 years later. And I've remarried and everything. So, yeah, I think whenever there's a tension between that, she just chooses to avoid any. She hasn't asked me. I don't think she wants to know, but it has affected our relationship.
I did not even think about the divorce aspect, but like, yeah, I got divorced immediately after.
I got divorced immediately after. Yeah, and
It was actually about a year and a half later when the rest of my family found out that I was an atheist. And it was because I was working for a Christian organization that was finding out that I didn't believe in Jesus. And so they determined to file false charges against me. And when my family found one of my aunts, an aunt who actually helped raise me, I talked to her on the phone and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "This organization, they're filing these false charges. Like I have to fight felon charges." And it was like 5 of them. And she says, "What's going on?" And I said, "They found out I don't believe in Jesus anymore." And her response was, "Then you deserve it."
shit.
I went through the next 3 years of my life fighting that case. Eventually won. My mother was in the courtroom. When I won, defending myself, she said, "Thank you, Jesus."
Wow. Well, unfortunately, I know there's all kinds of questions, and I'm sorry, we did what preachers do, and we just kept on talking longer than we were supposed to, and I do apologize. I think we're all going to be around, for the next period of time, but there is another panel that starts in 10 minutes, so out of respect for them, we got to cut it, okay? But thank you all so much, okay? See us in the back. Thanks for coming.